You might know RFK Jr. because of the story about him dumping a bear carcass in Central Park. Or maybe you know him because of the story of him sawing off the head of a beached whale and driving the skull home while, quote, whale juice streamed down the side of the family minivan. Or maybe you even know RFK Jr. because of the story about how he had a literal brain worm. However you know RFK Jr., you should know that now not only is he on Donald Trump's presidential transition team, but Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, think there could be even more room for him in a Trump administration.
I think he adds a lot to if we win. I mean, he's got some very interesting ideas and good ideas. I think he'll be a fantastic and influential person in terms of getting this country back on track.
I hope RFK has a role because I think he's a smart guy. I think he's fundamentally a good guy, and I'm glad to have him on the team.
Yeah, the Trump-Vance ticket is already fighting allegations that they are weird, but is this the way to change that impression by bringing RFK into the mix? Joining me now is Tim Miller, writer-at-large at The Bulwark. Tim, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So forgive the metaphor here, but what do you think of this Trump-Vance bear-hugging RFK Jr. like this?
Yeah, it's the whale is the one that really gets me, Eamon. I don't know. I just think about it, the minivan and the juice. Anyway, I don't get it. I mean, look, I get it, I guess, for short-term political purposes. I think that a lot of the kind of soft RFK support, people that just were the so-called double haters, Kamala has kind of gobbled them up over the last month, and that explains a lot of her poll movement, really. And so the remaining RFK voters were pretty Trumpy and conspiratorial and anti-establishment. So you'd think getting the endorsement, maybe he can bring some of those folks on board. What I don't understand is going to the next step of saying that RFK is going to play a key role in the next administration, that RFK told Tucker, I guess, that he's one of the leaders on the transition team for Trump if he wins, which is pretty scary. That I think has the ability to really turn off a lot of the voters you were talking about with Aaron Haynes earlier, these kind of suburban, exurban, former Republican swing voters in the Atlanta suburbs that he needs. And if you're one of those voters, you're more traditional, old school Republican, and you're looking at this group, and it's Vance, who doesn't care about Ukraine at all, and it's weird RFK with the brain worm and the vaccine conspiracies, and it's Tulsi, who's like Putin's #1 fan in Congress. What are they? They're not offering anything to that voter. And so I do think that that's a political risk in addition to kind of the brand risk of just being weird.
Let me ask you about Tulsi for a moment, because she is the other wild card that I guess he's added to this in a different way, maybe not the conspiratorial way, but as you said, really doubling down on this kind of like pro-Russia messaging of the modern Republican Party under Trump. Both RFK and Gabbard, strangely enough, endorsed Bernie Sanders back in 2016. And after that election, there was a lot of talk about the so-called Sanders-Trump voter, this kind of like working class white guy, voters who voted for Bernie in the primary and then Trump in the general election. Does that voter even still exist in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, a decent percentage of them were Trump voters already. In 2016, we call them Trump voters now, right? So you're not gaining anything by getting people that have already been voting for Trump twice. There's some, you see them out there in the internet. They're very online, they're posted on Reddit. It's Glenn Greenwald. He lives in Brazil, so his vote doesn't really count that much. But, there are a handful of these people, but there are way, way more, Romney voting Republicans, millions, that don't really like Donald Trump. I mean, there aren't clearly enough to take over the Republican Party. It's a huge minority in the Republican Party. But in a general election, as a swing voter population, there are so many more of those than there are kind of this weird other side of the horseshoe, conspiratorial, anti-vax, pro-Putin voter. There's far fewer of those. So I think I don't understand. Trump is offering nothing to the Haley voter. I mean, Haley herself has gone along with it because of her own ambition, which I think is pretty morally repulsive. But really, the Kamala ticket, not on a lot of policy per se, on domestic policy, but on themes, the patriotism, standing with NATO on a lot of the foreign policy. I think that Kamala was offering a lot more at her convention last week to that Haley voter than this Gabbard, RFK, Trump, three-headed monster is.
And you still have J.D. Vance, out of all people, speaking of weird, who's attached to this, because I want to play you this recently unearthed clip of J.D. Vance speaking to a Christian group about education back in 2021. Watch.
So many of the leaders of the left, and I hate to be so personal about this, but they're people without kids trying to brainwash the minds of our children. And that really disorients me and it really disturbs me. Randi Weingarten, who's the head of the most powerful teachers union in the country, she doesn't have a single child. If she wants to brainwash and destroy the minds of children, she should have some of her own and leave ours the hell alone.
All right, so we already know, that Vance's childless cat lady remarks did not go over well on the left. But it also strikes me, Tim, that criticizing childless teachers now might not go over too well on the right, either because of the role of Catholic nuns or just because the absurdity that you can only be a good teacher if you have children. How does the right view J.D. Vance's comments like this? Do they like him, or do they just think this is even going to get weirder and weirder every time he speaks?
Yeah. I mean, look, I had nun teachers. I think that there are Catholic right voters on the right that look at this like, what is this guy talking about? He also comes off as obsessed about this. I mean, there's going to be a big gender gap in this election, Eamon, but there are still women Republicans out there. And eventually they start looking at this guy and it's like, why is he so obsessed with whether women have children or not in women's wombs? And like, he's just constantly talking about this in all of these podcasts and all these interviews that he was doing. And it seems like a very personal vendetta he has against women who either chose not to or were unable to have children. And I just like, it doesn't gain you anything politically. And yes, it is weird to be obsessed with this and to talk about it in that manner.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he defends himself if there is a debate between him and Tim Walz on this issue. Tim Miller, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time as always.
Thanks, Eamon.